The victims of the infamous Jack the Ripper were not just random individuals, but women who shared a common and unfortunate circumstance. They were all believed to be prostitutes. This profession, largely stigmatized and marginalized during the Victorian era, made them particularly vulnerable targets in the crime-ridden, poverty-stricken slums of London's East End, specifically the Whitechapel district. These women, often referred to as the Canonical Five, Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly, lived lives marked by hardship and desperation, their occupations born out of necessity in an era where options for unskilled women were limited. Their transient lifestyles, coupled with the late hours they kept, made them easy prey for a predator lurking in the shadows. Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, and Elizabeth Stride were all found murdered in the early hours, their bodies bearing the brutal signature of the Ripper. Catherine Eddowes was found in Mitre Square, her body mutilated in a manner that suggested a disturbing escalation in violence. The final victim, Mary Jane Kelly, suffered the most gruesome fate with her body discovered heavily mutilated in her own room, suggesting the killer had more time and privacy. This focused victim profile suggests that Jack the Ripper was familiar with the area and its inhabitants, and able to blend into the environment unnoticed. It also highlights the tragic plight of these women, caught in a deadly intersection of societal neglect and a serial killer's murderous intent. The Ripper's murders were not mere acts of violence. They were gruesome exhibitions of overkill. In each instance, the victim's throat was cut, usually from left to right, indicating the killer might have been left-handed or ambidextrous. This initial act would render the victim unable to scream or resist, providing the Ripper with the opportunity to carry out his horrific mutilations undisturbed. Post-mortem examinations revealed that the murderer had an unsettling understanding of human anatomy. The bodies were often mutilated in a manner that suggested the killer had some medical knowledge. Organs were removed with precision, and in some cases, the victims were virtually decapitated. The savagery of the attacks and the evident surgical skill employed led to speculation that the Ripper could have been a butcher, a surgeon, or someone with a good understanding of the human body. This level of brutality, coupled with the audacity to commit such acts in public spaces, added a chilling dimension to the already horrifying crimes. Over a century later, the hunt for Jack the Ripper's true identity continues. His brutal modus operandi has become an enduring symbol of his reign of terror, a grim testament to the darkest corners of human nature. The name Jack the Ripper was first used in a letter sent to a London news agency in September 1888. This letter, known as the Dear Boss letter, was written by an individual claiming to be the murderer. The letter was disseminated in the press, forever cementing the anonymous killer's legacy with a name that still sends shivers down the spine. Before the murderer gained the infamous moniker Jack the Ripper, the British press referred to him as Leather Apron. However, it was the Dear Boss letter that would secure his place in history under the more terrifying name. Whether or not the Dear Boss letter was a hoax is still a point of debate among historians and criminologists. Regardless, it became the first written reference using the name Jack the Ripper in reference to the Whitechapel murderer. Over a century has passed since the infamous Autumn of Terror in 1888, yet the identity of Jack the Ripper, the notorious serial killer who stalked the streets of Whitechapel, remains shrouded in mystery. Despite the passage of time, new theories continue to surface, keeping the intrigue alive. One such theory, proposed by a retired English detective, suggests that Jack the Ripper was actually Karl Feigenbaum, a German sailor. This hypothesis is based on the sailor's criminal record and his execution for murdering a woman in America, a crime eerily similar to those committed in Whitechapel. Another intriguing theory involves Dawnston Stevenson, a man who reportedly contracted sexually transmitted infections from prostitutes. His intimate knowledge of the victims in the area, coupled with his suspicious behavior, has led some to believe he could have been the infamous murderer. In an interesting twist, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes, proposed the theory of Jill the Ripper. According to this theory, the murderer was a woman, possibly a midwife, which would explain why she could move about the streets late at night without arousing suspicion, and why the killings showed knowledge of human anatomy. A more recent theory involves a patient of Sir William Gull, identified only as S, who was allegedly the real Jack the Ripper. The claim is based on the belief that S was a person of significant power, lending credence to the theory that the murders were part of a larger conspiracy. However, despite these compelling theories, the true identity of Jack the Ripper remains an unsolved mystery. As forensic science continues to advance, many hope that one day we will finally unmask the infamous Whitechapel Butcher. Until then, the world continues to be fascinated and horrified by the enduring enigma of Jack the Ripper. A key point of contention within this enduring mystery revolves around the number of victims that fell prey to this notorious killer. The so-called canonical five, Marianne Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly, are widely agreed upon as victims of the Ripper. Their murders, committed in the autumn of 1888 in London's East End, exhibited a chillingly similar modus operandi, leading investigators of the time and subsequent researchers to attribute these killings to the same hand. However, some researchers argue that the body count might be higher. While 5 victims are generally accepted, there is speculation that Jack the Ripper may have been responsible for up to 11 murders. This figure includes other women killed around the same period under similar circumstances, but their connection to the Ripper remains unproven. This debate over the actual number of victims underscores the complexities involved in analyzing historical crime data. It also highlights the enduring enigma of Jack the Ripper, a faceless terror who continues to haunt the annals of criminal history. The discourse surrounding Jack the Ripper's victims serves not only as an examination of a historical crime, but also as a reminder of the lives tragically cut short. Whether the true number is 5 or 11, each victim personifies the grim reality of life and death in the slums of Victorian London.